Why are survival games so huge, and why do people love them so very much? What is it about suffering scraps and the occasional bit of swinging willy that makes people devote hundreds of hours into these games? Well, we've all wondered how we would survive in a life or death situation, and survival games let you experience just that without the whole, actual threat of dying aspect. And with that in mind, we've managed to rustle up the very best survival games. Bear in mind that this collection of survival games features some early access titles, so some of them certainly have their rough edges. Survival games without a bit of jank though is like a Rust server without a little bit of mental disorder. Okay, a lot of mental disorder. We're also only including one game per series for variety, so do bear that in mind before you start taking your bean cans down to the comments section. Hey, while you're there, subscribe and comment 32k gang and you could win a free Steam key for one of these games. Ooh. Number 20, Grounded. The more, shall we say, degenerate survival game players probably won't get along with Grounded just based on concept alone, as well as the lack of PvP. It's basically Honey, I Shrunk the Kids in survival form, with the game's vibrant, vivid back garden being a far cry from more gritty survival games. However, Grounded is far from an easy game, particularly as you're going to feel like the Hobbit's going against Shelob for a lot of your time with it. The garden's mix of flora and fauna is as eye-catching as it is deadly. In terms of mechanics, Grounded doesn't change things up massively from its peers, apart from the ability to use mutations to activate special perks. That said, the game's aesthetic, vibe and sense of humour is a real breath of fresh air. If you want a fully realised story, a charming world to explore and a survival game that's for everyone without being patronising about it, check this little gem out. Number 19, Raft. An idea so simple that it's a wonder nobody thought of it first, Raft is Subnautica meets Castaway, in which you must take a very basic raft and build it up into your own little fortress on the sea. Sharks are just one of the things you have to look out for here though. We are of course talking about the Screechers, who we think are pretty cool and neat for very unbiased reasons. Raft features plenty of interesting twists on the genre, including a love-hate relationship with seagulls and floating debris being the difference between life and death. It's not easy, but still accessible, especially if you grab some friends to scream out, "Well done!" occasionally with as well. After years in early access, Raft is now properly out and remains just as worth paddling towards as ever. If you've always wanted to play Subnautica but have a deep, deep fear of the unknowable depths of a planet that hides secrets that would make God himself tremble, give the crafty, dafty Raft a go instead. Don't do this though. Gary was just a week away from retirement. A week. Number 18, V Rising. V Rising felt bolstered by the massive success of Valheim just a year prior, showing that sometimes indies are the best places to go to find true innovation in what is now quite the congested space. You play as a vampire who must find blood and avoid the sun to survive, immediately flipping the script on the usual survival setup. Add some action RPG elements including a skill tree and dozens of bosses to conquer, and it's easy to sink your teeth into V Rising. However, what's probably most captivating here is the ability to rebuild your castle, basically fast forwarding past the huts made from twigs that so many survival games dump on you. The player feels like a big deal in V Rising, which goes doubly when you venture out into its massive open world and start staking your claim to it.
Smithers, are they booing me?
No, they're saying boo earns, boo earns.
V Rising is currently dwelling in early access at the time of recording, but Stunlock Studios will be cracking open the casket on the 1.0 release this May, so if every vampire starts spontaneously sparkling, that's not on us guys. Number 17, Ark Survival Evolved. A game with a UI so hideously abrasive and hideous that we question leaving it off this list on principle alone, Ark Survival Evolved follows a similar trend to the previous survival games mentioned, but with a more fantastical twist. Any game where you can mount a frog into battle has to at least be worth trying out though, right? You farm and you gasp build in Ark, a similar story to plenty of its peers. However, it's in its exotic array of silly animals and gear that Ark comes into its own. By its very nature, Ark is a deeply daft game, and Studio Wildcard have done well to embrace it, but there are also a lot of people who take it very seriously too. You can play it by yourself or with others, though expect the customary griefing if you decide to share a world with other players. Just absolutely do not play it on Switch, even if the dev team has patched it. Also, absolutely do not get your hopes up too high for the sequel, as this is a developer who is known to, frankly, take the piss out of their fans. Number 16, DayZ. DayZ, DayZ, why do you hate me? Where would survival games as a genre be without DayZ? Spun off from one of the most important mods ever, DayZ pretty much wrote the Bible for the whole genre. However, DayZ isn't going to be for everyone, especially in 2024. In fact, whether it's down to the long stretches of absolute nothingness and a performance that still isn't quite where it should be, there's a good chance that you're going to be completely underwhelmed by this game's first few hours. However, stick with it and also probably grab a few friends, and DayZ begins to slowly flourish. DayZ as a whole is something of a slow burn, with human encounters being few and far between, as well as there being a likelihood that they may just kill you outright, and then they might eat you, and start weirdly laughing for some reason. Just be prepared for some issues and don't expect too much of it, and you may have a whale of a time. If you don't get fatally dehydrated within minutes, that is. Maybe stick to PC though, as the console versions of this are still utter arse. Number 15, Rust. If you're at all sensitive, don't play Rust. If you are easily frustrated, don't play Rust. If you're at all a good person, don't play this game. Face Punch's notoriously toxic post-apocalyptic survival game is built around griefing other players just as much as it is about surviving itself, though if you are able to find food and water pretty steadily, your main concern is the awfulness of other people. It's about as unwelcoming to new players as these games can really get. However, if you're lucky to find other players who don't want to immediately kill you despite you only having a large rock, Rust becomes a whole lot of fun. Clans are part of the long-term gameplay of Rust, so you want to find some allies as soon as you can, though you can always hop into solo-only servers. Over time, it's morphed into more of a PvP kind of extraction-y game than straight survival, with you having to protect your hordes of loot from a server filled with very aggressive players. If your base gets wiped out, that's you pretty much done. Until the next wipe. And then the next one, and oop, you've been fired from your real-life job, and your wife left you, and you've started a digital war with the entirety of Russia. But hey, at least you got a box of sulfur, right? Yay! Number 14, No Man's Sky. Yes, it wasn't the game we thought it would be after that frankly now obviously over-promising first trailer, and yes, it's crazy that it's finally become that years since release, but No Man's Sky's first few wonderful hours are ones we wish we could bottle and keep forever. No Man's Sky really nails the wonder of exploration in survival, certainly more so than Starfield when it tried the same trick. Once you finally manage to lift off again, it becomes more of an exploration game as you explore the grand expanses of space before circling back to task you with building your own home. The survival elements here are fairly straightforward, but the discoveries of things like ancient languages and all manner of cursed animals is what will keep you hooked. It's not a perfect game or one that really quite justified its frankly insane hype, but with constant huge free content updates that at this point feel like Hello Games are on some kind of redemption heroin, No Man's Sky is now the game it should have always been. Ironically, No Man's Sky may have just survived itself. Number 13, Palworld. Look, let's just come out and say it. Palworld owes a canto load of inspiration to Pokemon. There's just no getting around how heavily Pocket Pair were inspired by the legendary IP, almost to the point where you feel that Nintendo are cooking up a cease and desist as we speak. However, for our money, Palworld does way more than enough to separate it from the Charizard factory by basically letting you enslave pals. Hey, if Ash Ketchum rolled with a slightly stronger Iron Fist, then maybe it wouldn't have taken him so bloody long to actually win something. In Palworld, you're dropped into a giant open world either alone or with friends and must catch the trademark bending pals in order to take on an evil syndicate, lead a quiet farm life, or start up the kind of factory line that would make even Amazon wince. There's a lot to figure out in Palworld beneath the cutesy graphics, and while it sometimes just cooks a little too hard and its design is a bit messy in places, there's no denying that Palworld does something that Pokemon hasn't in many years. Innovate. Oh, watch out, he's got a Glock! Number 12, Green Hell. Green Hell has been compared considerably to The Forest in the past, and while it's not quite as essential as that game, Green Hell still offers plenty of brand new ideas that epitomise survival. Though they both have a familiar mood and feel, it's Green Hell that is the more hardcore experience and one that will teach you how to play it with some incredibly harsh lessons. Stranded in the unwelcoming Amazon rainforest, you must scrape by however you can, though death is never far away. Whether it's because of a rattlesnake bite or eating a goddamn leaf, Green Hell makes no bones about how unforgiving it is. There's a lot that will annoy you in Green Hell, but your perseverance will be rewarded. After launching out of early access, Green Hell can certainly claim that it has one of the most compelling story modes out of any survival game. It's still a bit underrated, so make sure you check it out on sale. Number 11, This War of Mine. Whether it's boots on the ground, rockets in the air, or horses in your face, we always see war games. What we don't see, however, is what happens to the innocents caught in the fallout. This War of Mine shines a light on that in a way that's uncompromising and utterly haunting. Most of the other games on this list are a bit silly by comparison to 11-bit Studios' widely beloved gem. In the midst of a war zone, you must do everything you can to survive, including making plenty of tough decisions. You won't forget the first time you encounter the old couple. Over time, more and more people join you at your safe house, which can change the dynamics dramatically. Some are friendly, some are abrasive, but they're all just trying to survive. If you want to turn the stakes up to 11, it's the Little Ones DLC brings children into the mix and all of the stresses that come with them, and no, you can't just give them an iPad. God help us all. Number 10, Valheim. It could be argued that Valheim isn't really too much of a survival game, as there aren't any hunger and thirst meters to keep track of, and death never feels that punishing. However, when you're dropped onto a gigantic map with barely anything to your name, you'll quickly see why many recognise it as one of the best survival games because of what it changes. While stepping back from the classic survival mechanics, Valheim instead looks at other areas of the genre that make it so inviting, namely building yourself up to an all-encountering demigod. From the game's almost tranquil opening hours up until you've basically built your own Minas Tirith, Valheim is a game that's not only about empowering the player to slay Odin's ancient rivals, but also about letting them carve their own path. Valheim doesn't hold your hand, but thanks to the support for up to 10 players, at least a few of your friends can carry you through your first encounter of many in this distinctly beautiful world. Number 9, Don't Starve. Compared to most of these other survival games, Don't Starve is kind of a little bit adorable. There are no penises, 0 sad people teabagging your corpse, and a welcome lack of jank. It's quite frankly refreshing, but it's actually one of the oldest entries on this list, as Clay have been steadily supporting it with tweaks and new DLC ever since it launched. It's also tough as bloody nails. You're transported to an island full of things that want to make you dead. Stop me if this is sounding familiar. However, Don't Starve distinguishes itself thanks to a misleadingly wholesome aesthetic and a steep learning curve. Whether alone or with friends in the Together spin-off, Don't Starve is a simple joy and probably one of the best entry points if you want to find out what the survival genre is all about. You know, without all the teabagging and slurs and that. Number 8, Terraria. It's been quite difficult to separate Minecraft and Terraria in the minds of some players over the years, with the latter not being quite as popular but still a rousing success all the same. They aren't a million miles apart in terms of their core mechanics, but Terraria's 16-bit 2D world may be enough to win over retro gamers. It looks every inch like the Nintendo classic. Terraria emphasises combat more so than its closest cousin as well, helping it to feel even more like a doff of the cap to games gone by. There's not quite so much a focus on food and water as other games on this list either, so it's less about the micromanagement and more about the adventure when it comes to Terraria. If you've yet to play it, you have no excuses, as it's pretty much on every platform ever made. It was even on Stadia, which failed the survival game of life very, very hard. Number 7, Darkwood. You want a more hardcore version of Don't Starve, a survival game that's already far more terrifying than its lo-fi visuals may suggest? Then you should absolutely check out Darkwood. One of the most unsettling and constantly tense games of its ilk thanks to some superb audio design. Ugh. The dog. The damn dog. The goal is simple here. Survive. While that is the point of all the survival games we've compiled so far, Darkwood doesn't ask you to go up against teenagers with a penchant for teabagging. Instead, you must roam a forest by day to scavenge and hunker down for the night and escape all the things that go bump in it. Darkwood features a top-down perspective which is somehow even more panic-inducing and absolutely zero hand-holding throughout. It's a bewildering ride that wants to make you feel like you're alone in a forest where everything has gone exceptionally wrong. Best of luck. Number 6, Minecraft. Forget about the weird monument and bed wars, whatever in the Catholic childhood that is, for a second, and you will find that at its core, Minecraft is a survival game. A lot of its peers on this list owe a debt of gratitude to Mojang's Giant. If you've been playing Minecraft for years, you no doubt remember how tough its early goings were, with the creepers a creeping and resources a relative rarity, though it's not honestly much of a challenge to survive in these days. Want to change that? There is a more hardcore version available with permadeath that will actually add a good chunk of danger to every decision. And sweet Mother Teresa's potatoes, looks like we're gonna do us some Minecraft playthrough soon, eh? Jesus Christ. Minecraft has gone beyond being a simple survival game at this point to something different entirely, meaning it's had more than its fair share of similarly blocky imitators. There can only be one though, so if you somehow never played Minecraft, you really ought to give it a go. Number 5, RimWorld. One of the most pioneering games of the last decade or so, calling RimWorld just a survival game doesn't really do it justice. It's like the Baldur's Gate 3 of survival games mixed with The Sims, mixed with Stardew Valley, mixed with the depravity of the human mind. Or you could just, you could just make some very nice hats. Lots of very nice hats. While there are definitely survival elements to it, this Dwarf Fortress inspired monolith offers much more, the hugely impressive depth allowing you to craft many stories of your own. Want to turn your civilization into part cyborg pirates in the slave trade? Knock yourself out. Things start off pretty straightforward. Help colonists to survive. With some patience and plenty of harsh lessons learned, you will be able to cultivate a world in your own image. While the game may certainly look a little basic, Football Manager OGs will probably treat this as their catnip. With some of the most robust mod support of any game on Steam and an almost limitless level of role-playing, expect RimWorld to stick around for years and years and years to come. Number 4, Subnautica. Compared to most of the games on this list of the best survival games, Subnautica is positively vibrant. Gone are the muted colours and destitution, replaced by a life under the sea. If you want a break from the grime of the post-apocalypse, Subnautica is the perfect substitute. That's not to say that it doesn't pose a challenge though. It is a survival game after all, and one that will make you genuinely scared to look down the next time you take a paddle out in the ocean. After your spaceship crash lands on an alien planet, you have to eke out an existence by balancing your basic human needs, the allure of exploration, and a need to make your way home. The first time you get out of your escape pod and gaze out at the giant hulking wreck is like the survival game equivalent of seeing Limgrave for the first time in Elden Ring. And the deeper you go down in the sea in Subnautica, the deeper the nightmares become. Lovecraft would be proud of the creations lurking beneath. Number 3, Project Zomboid. There sure are a lot of zombies when it comes to survival games, a tradition which Project Zomboid continues. However, Project Zomboid pioneers like so few of its peers. A single bite or even scratch can be deadly here, and thanks to the game's persistent world, your new character might even have to deal with your old reanimated corpse. That's cool. Marketed as a hardcore survival simulator, the billing certainly fits. You will constantly be up against the wall, never feeling especially safe or with much of a chance. Project Zomboid isn't just a game, it's an obligation. Just like many of those we've already mentioned, Project Zomboid is still in early access, and probably will be until the sun finally packs it in, but it's making all the right moves nevertheless. Project Zomboid has a few understandable blemishes here and there thanks to its small team, and it may not be the most advanced looking game either, but make no mistake, there's a lot of unforgettable stories you can craft here. Like that time I overcooked a shrimp and completely ruined a 50-hour save. Oh, Zomboid, how you break my heart. Number 2, The Long Dark. From one rock-hard survival game to another, The Long Dark's big bad isn't a monster, nor is it other players. It's the elements, and the occasional bear. The Long Dark can be experienced in one of two ways, as an out-and-out survival simulator, or as a narrative-based adventure. The former is what it made its name upon, but don't sleep on Wintermute. It carries all the same punching mechanics while also being wrapped up in a compelling story. Compared to other survival games, The Long Dark may be slightly on the slow side for some, though there's nothing quite as thrilling as dragging your starving arse across the Canadian wilderness in search of pork and beans. The desperate struggle to actually survive isn't replicated as well in any other game in the genre. It's a small thing in the grand scheme of things, but The Long Dark's art style may also be a huge selling point for you. Many a night will go by with you simply staring up at the moon and finding an odd kind of peace that's then completely broken by a wolf gnawing at your toes. And number 1, The Forest. No game has ever made the monotony of chopping down trees feel quite so compelling. The thud of your axe and the consequent falling of trees means that although you may be doing a lot of it to survive against freakish enemies after your plane crashes, you will never really tire of it. An early access graduate that was fully released in a relatively short amount of time, The Forest has lots going for it that its contemporaries simply don't. You of course must survive, but you also have to find your captive son in a story that's actually worth investing your time into. Sure, it's one of those games where you have to watch several lore videos to fully grasp what the f*** is going on, but The Forest's world building is hard to match. The only reason not to play The Forest for some might come down to its lack of PvP, but the chances of nonsense erupting is always pretty high thanks to how emergent and immersive this cursed island really is. This is the game you want to check out if you want survival in its tightest and quite possibly best form. And while it's not quite as good or well-rounded, Sons of the Forest is a more than worthy follow-up with an absolute bevy of cave-dwelling freakazoids to try and baptise while you try and keep your new wife happy. Okay, wives. And that was our video looking at the very best Rockstar games ever made. What too high? What too low? Let's know down below. I Jimmy for Culch Vulch, and thank for watching.